better. I've been investing there for 6 years now, 6 years, and we're tripling down on our investments. I just actually was offered today double my money on a lot that I own that I've only owned for 2 years.
Okay, I bought it for a little bit on the table for the next guy. No, I'm just kidding. You do.
I bought it for 98 grand. I was just offered. I'm negotiating right now to get 200 for it. And we'll get somewhere between 180 and 200 probably for it. So there's your answer to that. I love Orillia. I think it's
but
perfect.
Let's go back up a little bit. Let's back up about just that. In all of this, in Orillia or any Kelowna, it doesn't matter. One of the things that RAIN provides in terms of is research and analysis, and we do all of those things. But it's really important for, as a community, it's so important for us to learn how to fish. And, so for example, things happen in Orillia. One of the, as much as JG will, talk to Jennifer, for example, go, Jennifer, tell me what's going on in Peterborough. Well, she can do that, and she often does. They get into it because JG's lazy, but he's but the truth is that he's in it every day, and he has some really, really great insights into what's happening, let's say in Peterborough or Orillia, because he's actually in the market. In actual research, there's always lag time, always. And so if you're in a specific market, if you live in that area, if you're boots on the ground, you always have your fingers are more on the pulse than the overarching research that we're doing. It's just, that's the nature of the beast.
I use, just to back that up, PF, and then keep going, is I use the research to confirm my decision. Very important. I don't go the other way. I go in, I do my research, I get a good pulse, and then I get RAIN's research to confirm that I'm on the right track or not. Sorry, PF. Sorry to cut you off, man. You were on a roll there. Perfect. It was so good too. I mean, the genius coming out of your mouth at that point was unbelievable. Sorry, cut you off.
So, I think the point is all of this on the call is that we're going to give you what we give you, but we really do encourage you to pay attention to, start reading the newspapers, looking at articles that are talking about GDP growth, talking about transportation changes, talking about specific neighborhood changes that are happening. Where they might be running an LRT into a neighborhood that's never had one before, where a freeway is opening up and it's they're going to have a whole new exit that takes you off into somewhere else, a ring road in the area. Jobs, a call center, what's going on that is driving the demand. We always say, we use the phrase follow the money, and there's a lot to be said for some of the big shopping malls or big businesses that are moving into a city or into a neighborhood. They do a lot of research. They don't arbitrarily put tens of millions or hundreds of millions into an area. They're doing it for a reason. And so these are all things that we look forward to as indicators, and they're lead indicators for us as real estate investors. So we want to be out in front of it. And so pay attention to those announcements, pay attention to the actual digging in the ground and getting stuff done. Orillia
is investing, Orillia is investing massively in itself right now. What I mean is some good big developments, some bigger players coming in, some good inventory being added, good growth to the market. So rents are really strong. The thing I love, guys, for everyone, and this applies to Orillia, but applies to a lot of many markets, is you look at the rents in Orillia compared to like the rents in a Toronto. The rents are very comparable. I'm getting $16.95, $17.95 for a 2-bedroom. I'm getting $2,000 a month for a 3-bedroom. So that's like, it's not Toronto high, but it's not far off either. But I can buy a duplex in Orillia for $400, whereas forget buying anything in Toronto. So I'm looking at that comparative between what I can get for the rents and what I can buy it for. That comparative is very key, as you guys know, with the RAIN formula. But what's important is can the market handle a drop? That's really what I'm looking for. Is what can the market handle some cooling off? Is it going to be, and Carly's asking, what's the RAIN formula? You got to check the Real Estate Investing in Canada course for that. There's 78 hours of it. So that's the place to get details.
So Carly, as you go to, as you come, if you're coming out to RAIN meetings, if you are part of the All Access group, what you'll see is what we call the long-term success formula, which really talks about GDP growth, job growth, in-migration, what's bringing people into an area, which of course drives rental demand and inevitably drives pricing of properties. Now, we'll just go through the list of questions as they kind of pop up.
I do have the Kelowna answer.
Okay, great.
Good. So this is Jared Hope's answer to the Kelowna question, which is where's Kelowna at in the cycle? Jared says some Kelowna rents are dropping. So the rents are starting to drop, which is obviously not a great sign. Market is flat to dropping, and it is not a good time to buy right now. Even though there's more inventory on the market, it is not a great time. So he says he would not be buying right now. That's in Kelowna specifically. And that was a question someone had about moving some money into Kelowna. And I know that Jared's actually moving money out of Kelowna right now.
And just so you know, Jared lives in Kelowna. So, and he primarily invests in Alberta and Edmonton even specifically. So that give you some insights into that. Before you took me off on another path, I was going to answer a different question. One of the Kristen had come up with was asking about different strategies to use. And now, Kristen, I'm going to just share your email a little bit. So wondering about discussing strategies of creative acquisitions of residential properties. So, I already do lease options, lease purchases, agreements for sale, transfer, beneficial interest. What else can I do? I think my overarching answer to that question, Kristen, is I think that depending on what you've gained some real expertise in, be careful not to be kind of erratic in all the strategies that you're trying to to engage with, and in terms of not making, not having to put money in. So in other words, whether it be an agreement for sale or working with an owner on a vendor take back, or getting in light is all good, but I would really grab one of the strategies that you've listed there that you've gotten really good at, and then just pound that strategy.
Okay.
And what will come out of that is opportunities. So for example, if you're doing an agreement, let's say you're going to be an agreement for sale, if that's going to be your business strategy. You put marketing behind that, you put your horsepower behind that, you put your focus behind that, you put your agreements all behind that, so that energy really does. And then you start talking about that. And I'm just using agreements for sale as one example. So you take those one, maybe two strategies. If it sounds like you've done a number of different ones, I would get really, really good at one or two of them, and then just focus on those. That's where you'll get the most growth from. May not seem like it in the moment, but it always turns out that way.
Right.
All that energy is directed that way, and you actually build the model that you're working with. If this is going to be, is this full time for you right now, Kristen, or is that where you want to go with it?
Full time. Yeah.
So in that context, put some horsepower behind your marketing, put some horsepower into the message that you get out to, the people in, your circle of influence, and how you put it out there, and just become that person. You want to be known for the guy who does this, that, or in your case, the girl that gets known for this, that, or the next thing, that
Right.
you become the expert.
Okay. Thank you.
Specialist instead of a generalist is often a good strategy to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
Now, Carly was asking about, Edmonton, where to invest in the first property, and that you're going to be 100% financed on it. I want to caution anybody about being 100% financed on anything. So make sure that you and I'm not even going to make it wrong, but here's the fundamental around it is if you're going to do that, you got to be playing a long-term game, or you got to know that you're flipping it in a shorter period of time. You got to be really clear on what your exit strategy is. You have to have a cash flow that will cover you through any kind of a downturn. So you need some spread in there. And then, you know, don't stretch yourself. So in other words, if you're going all in on a finance of any kind, make sure you have access to additional capital for a reserve fund, and then know that that additional capital is going to then cost you more money. Right?
I really, that's a great point, PF. You know, I'm a big fan, as you know, Patrick, and I've told many people before, I'm a big fan of the fix and refi strategy right now. Where I invest, I can't comment on Edmonton specifically because I don't invest there. I can tell you where I do invest in Ontario. You know, that fix and refi works well. But Patrick's right. Make sure you have access to capital. You can go 100% finance, but don't, make sure it's not your last dollar, because that's risky, and we got to make sure we don't. You never want to risk the farm.
Yeah, for sure. That's the key to that. And
if you had, and in terms of upside, I mean, I think you have way more runway in Edmonton in the long term than you do in Ontario. Ontario has been hot for years. And I think that if you invest wisely in the proper markets that we talk about, I think that you'll do wonderful. You'll do amazing. But Edmonton is in a great spot right now for some new capital. So just, that's my thoughts.
You know, this is, you know, it's an interesting conversation to have in a couple different ways. So people like to jump, you know, the energy that gets behind a hot market, you know, where you're chasing the market, you're going for it because you're seeing the market, and everybody loves to get into the hype of that, because every time they talk to somebody, it's like, oh, I bought this property and I just made 50 grand in the last 8 months, and they got lots of really positive stories. But if that market hits the ceiling, so let's say there is a black swan event, let's say there is a actual, you know, there's a short-term something that happens that screws up a market, like, you know, like the stress test, like an increase in interest rates, like whatever might happen, the distance that you can fall from up here to there is like 20% overnight. Easy can happen, okay? You have to be prepared. Now, that's a big drop. Like you could do 10, 15, 20%. Now, it doesn't, I say overnight, I'm talking about very quickly. You take a market like Edmonton, who's been kind of scraping along the bottom of the, you know, of the bottom of the crater for quite some time. What's your worst case scenario and a downside? You know, when you talk about risk mitigation, yeah, it can go down, but really, how much can it go down? And so your downside in a market this is where, to JG's point, you look at the economic fundamentals of Edmonton, Calgary, or Alberta overall, and you go, gosh, you know, if I can get in, buy smart, get great cash flow, get great management, and Carly, because I know that you're in Burnaby thinking about investing in Edmonton, you have to be really clear on who your team is in Edmonton, because they're going to be critical, absolutely essential to you having success in that market. I want to stress that for anybody. Now, so to JG's point, when you look at what's going on economically in Alberta, the great news about it for those who are just getting started in Alberta, you've got time. You're not, you know, depending on what price point you're in, there are certainly some good deals out there. That there's actually been some multiple offers on good deals, but it's because they're good deals and because they're at a price point that really makes sense. Mm-hmm. So get in on the low end of a market. It's a great place to be.
Counterintuitive though.
It is. Man, oh man, psychologically, holy cow, that's a tough game to play.
Yep. New area or older neighborhood in Edmonton? Well, you take that one, PF. What's the neighborhood, Walter? Do you have any ideas there? Is it better to buy in a newer area or an older neighborhood in Edmonton?
Well, let's go back. Well, first off, Walter, what's your thoughts in an area that you're looking in Edmonton? Because then, I mean, not that it matters too much. I'll still answer the question the same way, but I'm just curious.
So I was just up at the Acre event there a couple weeks ago, and just I'm based in Calgary, and most of our stuff is here and in Kelowna. We're just looking to diversify. Seen some of these ones that have the legal suite top bottom, and then these new carriage houses on the back, which are brand new, under 600. Cash flow seems like they'd be reasonably good, but then they are on the outskirts. They don't have transit, so on and so forth, compared to something that's in the area closer to the university or state or NATE.
I just was going to see, I saw Wayne Hillier was on this call. Has he gone away? He was just here a minute ago. Too bad. Doesn't matter. You know, here's some things in that conversation, Walter, is that carriage homes in Edmonton are a new thing.
Okay.
That back, what do they call them? Laneway something, or
garden suites, I think is what they're calling them.
Yeah. That's new in Edmonton. So I would want to see real, I don't want to listen to a realtor or a builder's story about how that's going to work in Edmonton and the cost of doing it. And that's all great. You're in a down market in Edmonton, and so people have lots of choices. And so access to that laneway, for example, or that garden suite is going to be a huge issue often. And why do people want to live in 600 square feet in Edmonton when anywhere in Edmonton right now you can get 1,000 and 1,200 square feet and still be very affordable. So I'd just be really cautious about a new initiative like that. It's been kind of percolating for 3 or 4 years, and I haven't heard anybody bragging about how awesome it is. So just pay attention. I haven't dug into it any deeper because it's not of interest, and it seems to keep falling off the radar. Now that you brought it up, I'll bring it back to my attention again, because if you brought it up, there's probably other people looking at it. That's the first part of that conversation. The next part of that conversation for me is, what is your tenant profile, or who is your tenant profile? That really dictates a lot of where and what you buy. So do you need walkability, or are you okay? You know, is your tenant profile, so for example, if you're downtown, I mean, Edmonton is not a walkable city for the most part, because we get to -30. So really look at your tenant profile. So when you're deciding old neighborhood, there's some funky old neighborhoods that are really cool and very popular, and people want to live there. They're desirable. And then there's some old neighborhoods that people don't want to live in. So be careful and just be aware of what your tenant profile is. Who is your end user? You follow?
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
And then, and that'll be based on, sometimes is what your price points are and what rent is. So just to expand on that conversation a little bit more is, there's going to be in areas in Edmonton that the house cannot even be all that awesome, but you'll get, let's say 1,500 or 1,800 or 1,500 up and 900 down, or whatever the math might be. But there's going to be other areas where, just because of where it is, they're going to go, no, I don't want to live in that neighborhood. I'm not going to, and even if you drop the rent, you're going to attract a different tenant profile. So those numbers really matter.
The other thing to consider is where you're at in your portfolio as well, Walter, which is, is this your first property, your third property, your eighth property? Can you, and I'll give you a good example. I'm just giving you my thoughts on what I'm doing. So I'm buying now stuff that, I'm buying things that I didn't buy 5-6 years ago, because I'm actually looking at my business, my real estate like a business. I have a lot of clients that they want to start with a smaller apartment, then move to a bigger apartment, and then move to an even more premium apartment. They kind of want to move throughout my portfolio, but I don't have entry-level apartments. I don't have entry-level product. I only have premium product right now. So I've been buying more entry-level product for a couple of reasons. One, it'll allow me to move people through my portfolio. If someone can't afford a higher rent, I can downgrade them to something else. Second thing is it diversifies me. Third thing is that I'm able to do that now. I can afford a bit more risk. So I'm buying stuff that needs more love, more renovation, so on and so forth. But you have to look at your overall mix of portfolio. You can't make the decision in a silo. And especially when you get to more than a couple properties and you start having 5 or 10 doors in your property, you have to look at these questions and really consider it from a business perspective. Consider your product mix, consider your tenant profile, like Patrick mentioned, and that'll really help guide you.
Okay, no, thank you very much.
The other, I want to go back to the Orillia question about, I think it was apartment, multifamily? And I wanted to dig into that a little bit in terms of how are you defining multifamily? I want to just get clear on that a little bit. Who asked that question? I don't remember.
So she's talking about fourplex.
Fourplex, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing, because I look at multifamily as 5 and higher, and actually when I think about multifamily, I'm thinking 8 or higher.
Here's something a lot of people don't know, by the way. Speaking of fourplexes, Lena brought up an interesting point. Fourplexes are actually, they straddle. So a 3plex and lower is considered residential and you qualify under residential rates. 5plex or more is commercial in Ontario. And I think it's the same all over the country.
Yeah.
But fourplex actually straddles. And a lot of people don't know this. It could be, you could get residential financing on a fourplex if you qualify, but you can also get commercial financing on a fourplex if you don't qualify personally. Yeah. So a fourplex is kind of this interesting mix of products, which kind of allow, because you talk about financeability, if you have room to finance yourself, then a fourplex, you might be able to qualify for super duper rates on a personal side of things. On the flip side, if you're having a tough time qualifying, you go to commercial on it and it changes things.
So let's just, I think you bring up a good point there, JG, and let's not assume that everybody here knows the difference between qualifying personally and qualifying on a commercial or a commercial mortgage. So, that fundamental difference is that when you go for a financing, if you're trying to finance a fourplex, for example, as JG gave that example, personally, they're going to look at your income, they're going to look at your debt service ratio, they're going to look at it and say, can you carry that mortgage personally? When you go for a commercial loan or commercial mortgage, they're looking at the performance of the property. They are considering your income, but it's not the going factor. They're actually looking at you and saying, are you a good client? Do you have a track record? Do you have some income? So, but the property then qualifies on its own based on its financial performance, which is cap rates and the overall performance from a cash flow point of view of that particular property.
Yeah, correct. And Oleg and I were chatting just offline, and a lot of people do feel the 5, 10, 12 units are tougher from a cash flow perspective. You get into the 18 unit plus, then things get really interesting, but those cost more money up front. So you either have to be good at raising capital or you have a good source of funds to do those kinds of deals.
And something everybody should really, I want you guys to make a note of this, and anybody who's looking at multi, but in any case, I'm going to stress this, and I want to stress it really clearly in a multifamily scenario, but always there's some stuff going on in the insurance industry right now, residential and multifamily insurance. And before you do any deal, if you stumble across a smoking hot deal on a small multi or whatever multi, do not assume that you can get insurance for it. Do not assume it. You must make that a condition of buying it. So please, I can't stress that enough. There's lots going on. My guy is a third generation insurance guy. I've had extensive conversations with him. There's lots of headwinds in the insurance industry right now, and he says they're going through a tough cycle, and he suspects another 3 years. Where I've heard horror stories, so I just want you to be aware of what's going on in the insurance industry. So please put that up front as a question that you need to make it sure it's a condition of buying.
Great point, PF. The other thing about big multis, because everybody gets, they're very sexy, right? A lot of people get hyped up about them, which I think is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, coming back to planning out your portfolio like a business, you got to think strategically. You know, what's your exit plan out of your portfolio? A lot of people don't even think about this, which is fascinating to me, but a lot of people don't even think when you're going to sell these buildings, how you're going to sell these multis. The tax consequence to selling a multifamily building with 18 units that you bought for $1.5 million and you sell for $4 million down the line. Are you passing your wealth on to your kids? Are they going to manage multis? It's a different game, the multifamily game. So just ask yourself these questions and really consider it, because a lot of people and the reason I know this is because I'm that guy. I asked Patrick, I'm that guy that shoots and then asks questions later, and then you end up with problems because you got all this property and you got these things you're dealing with. And so I've learned to ask questions first, thanks to mentorship by some wiser people. And I've surrounded myself with those people on my team who slow me down purposely for that. So anyways, just putting it out there, because I know at the beginning, I've known many people who have big portfolios. They have 50, 60, 70 units, like doors. And now they want to get out of the game. And it's like they are dealing with these tax problems and these tax consequences and these insurance problem that Patrick's talking about. And they never ask themselves the question. I actually have a guy, get this, you're gonna think this is crazy. He owned 60 units, a 20 unit, a 10 unit, a 20 unit, and a 30 unit. And he actually had to in order to get access to his wealth, he actually had to refinance a portfolio, build a bunch of duplexes, start a construction company, build a bunch of duplexes in order to be able to sell them off one at a time, to be able to properly exit his portfolio over the course of time. And it was actually him that cued me onto a lot of these questions. So it's just things to consider, right, Patrick? Just these considerations are critical.
It goes back to even, Walter, you asking the question about a newer neighborhood or an older neighborhood. You have to consider, the demographic of who you think is who you want your end user client to be. What are they doing? If you're in the, if you're looking into Mill Woods, or if you're looking southwest, or like so in other words, southwest or southeast, everybody likes northeast because they're priced really well. It's like an entry point, but keep in mind, you're attracting a certain demographic, and you have to say, well, why am I buying there, and what's the future look like? So make sure whatever decision you're buying, whether you're buying a new unit, something that you're going to fix up, whatever, to JG's point, whatever decision you're making, make it intentionally with a future plan of how am I going to exit, who is my client, what's my demographic, how does this fit in with my overall portfolio? Is it this random thing out there? And how am I managing it? What is the upside? So there's a lot of questions to look at. And what I'm afraid of when I have these conversations in this context is I don't want it, it's not meant to overwhelm. It's not meant to shut people down. The reality of it is when you're going through a learning curve, it's like everything seems complicated and confusing. If you keep working through it, all of a sudden you go to the next level and you start to have these answers, and they just come to you because it's how you're thinking. So don't let this shut you down or deter you from taking action. Maybe look at it as slowing you down, and then asking yourself these questions so that you're better equipped going forward to make good decisions. Cycle in Calgary is actually slightly behind, very slightly behind Edmonton, which is really interesting because Edmonton usually follows Calgary, which is to say Edmonton's just entering into a recovery cycle. Edmonton will come in right behind, or Calgary is going to come in right behind it. Historically, Calgary will then surpass it historically. But Calgary's in tough because of where the head offices for oil companies were based. Better neighborhoods in Edmonton for cash flow. So I don't think there's any particular neighborhood. Lots of guys are going northeast, but some of them they're everywhere. When you're looking for deals right now in Edmonton, think about what you want. I'm going to keep going back to tenant profile. Right now and in the future, that up-down suited bungalow still is a home run. Personally, in Edmonton, I've got 3 or 4 condos that I wish I could get the hell out of, or at least 2 of them I wish I could get the hell out of. Hard to get out of a condo right now. Personally, I don't want anything to do with a condo. That's me. Same with old townhouses. Stay the hell away from them in Edmonton, especially northeast Edmonton. There's a glut out there of that kind of stuff. You'll own that thing forever. So be careful about that in Edmonton right now. So what's really popular right now, I've got because I bought them years ago, I've actually got some bungalows that are the complete house, like a whole house bungalow, 1,100 square feet. You know, I can charge $1,800-1,900 bucks a month for rent on those things. And that works, that math works because of when I bought them, but they're like hugely popular, hugely. So that was just one of those accidents that I had from years ago. But the point is this many years later, they're working out. Up-down suited units, still very, very popular for investment because, and there's a couple of reasons for that. There's always, but be picky about what you're buying. In Edmonton right now, and we're going to use Edmonton as an example, could use Calgary, anywhere in Alberta right now. There's so much to choose from. So they got to look clean. They got to be bright. They got to be relatively up to speed and current, or you're just not going to get the rents that you need. That's the key there.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a bunch more?
You got someone. Jeff is working on converting a bungalow to an up-down duplex in Ottawa. That's awesome, Jeff. Those are awesome. Those are great deals. Ottawa
is such a great market too.
Yeah, well, Ottawa's #1 in Ontario right now, and those conversions. If it's your first one, Jeff, just make sure your budgets are tight. Make sure you budget more than you think, and make sure you expect to do it longer than you think, because it always costs more than you think. And it's yes, making it legal is a big headache. Absolutely. So
yeah. So the other thing in that case, Jeff, is I don't know if you're going out to the member meetings. Ottawa is a really, really great community. Love that community. And make sure you get on their Facebook page and reach out. You know, there's so many members out there that are very, very experienced. So 100. Reach out to them. Lots of experience. Tap into that brain trust of community in Ottawa. It's a very, very good community. Well, they're all good communities, but love Ottawa.
What else you got, guys? Where else are you stuck?
Anybody
stuck anywhere? I want to know if anybody's stuck anywhere.
Well, I see Walter's got a future real estate investor sitting on his knee. She's beautiful pink. Wow.
Perfect. Need more money. Yes. That's awesome. Now, what comes first? Let's talk about that. Matthew, have you finding JV partners? Yeah, John too. So I have a lot of people finding money. Let me ask you guys this. I want to vote from all of you. What comes first, the deal or the money? What do you go find first? You go find the money first, you go find the deal first? Deal. I hear deal. I hear deal. I hear deal. What else? Don't let peer pressure. I hear money. Oleg says money. It's because you're a multi guy. A couple split down the middle. Money. What do you say, Patrick?
I'm not going to comment until everybody's in.
All right, let's go, guys. Come on, a deal or money. It's a 50-50 chance. Deal or money. Which one? Oh, it's pretty much split down the middle right now. I love it. So good. All right. Anybody else? Deal or money? What's the little one say? Deal or money? Deal, she says. Patrick, what do you say?
I say it depends.
Don't give me that bullshit.
Well, but here's the thing about it, right? Is that it depends on where you are in your journey and who you are. I find that when people get to know, somebody said, Oleg says it depends on the market. Yeah. That can be somewhat true, but it doesn't matter how good the market is. If people don't like you or they don't trust you, they're not going to give you money to invest in real estate. one of the biggest things that we come in as an investor is this question comes up a lot. And, for people who are really, if you've got a track record, here's the thing, money will follow you. That's often is the case, is that if you've got deals done and you're known as a deal maker, then actually you attract capital for different reasons. Often, and you'll have some people who are very definitive, have the deal, and that's great. One way to attract a deal is you get a deal under contract. So in other words, get the offer tied up, have the conditions that you need to have the conditions, and then, send out a pro forma to your database, go, hey guys, I've got this deal. Anybody interested in investing in it? And you explain the deal and overall, and that's a way to go fishing for capital. So having the deal, some would say that's the way to do it. Others are just, I've actually got people in Ottawa, as we did, you and I sat down in Ottawa, JG, and we had a beer, and he's got more capital than he's got deals. Like, he's actually looking to place capital. And that's because he's been known as a deal maker and a deal finder, and he works real estate. That's his game. So I don't know that there's a simple answer. I've been a capital partner many times, and that's generally actually the road I go these days. But ultimately, people come to me with the deal and I look at it.
Yeah.
And then I base it on their reputation.
If you, in my opinion, if you have to choose one or the other, I go find the deal first. You can always, with a good deal, you can always attract capital. But I do have, I do have a track record. I have a brand. I have a lot of things that I've built over the years that I can lean on. I have lots of, especially when you have experienced money partners, experienced capital partners, they're not going to give you, so a couple things are going to happen. One, if they part with their money before you have a deal, then they're going to want to get paid on it from day one. And if you're going to start paying out on that deal before you have a deal, now I call that risky. I'm not sure I like that. If you go that way, so just consider that as a potential as well. So,
one of the things that, to JG's point though, so joint venture partners are, JG just doesn't look for capital. If I was telling JG what to do, because he's got so much money of his own, he doesn't look for capital partners. But if he was, if JG, with his track record now and the way he's been building his own portfolio and being out there, if JG sent out an email to his database and just said, hey gang, I'm looking for some capital because I'm going to be doing some more deals. Let me know if you're interested. He would have all sorts of people say, I'm interested. Now he could qualify it and say, you have to have a minimum of 150 grand or $1 million or whatever the number is, doesn't matter. But in terms of putting that money to work, he can easily work around that by saying, here's a letter of intent. When I find the deal, I'm coming to you, and I'll find the deal within the next 6 months. You have a letter of intent that says I'll come up with 150 grand. So it's all ways of working around that, so you're not paying for that money earlier than you need to.
I love it. PF, I'll be hitting you up for a transfer a little later today. Just get ready for it.
Please. Dude, you have to transfer my way.
Okay, I got a bolt, but PF, this has been good. Hopefully this has been valuable, guys. I'd love to hear I'd love to know if you think this is valuable or if you'd like to see something differently. Patrick's going to share with you an email where you could send that feedback, and we get all that. So that's great.
Yeah. Thanks, JG. Appreciate it, buddy. You're muted. Come again when you can't stay so long. No, I don't know what to say. So we got some time left, and I'm happy, as for those of you who've been on these calls before, I'm not in a rush. I don't have a deadline, but I want to make sure everybody's getting what they need. Has the conversation been helpful for everybody today? Thumbs up. Okay, great. Is there any other burning questions for what, for where you're at? There's no real dumb questions in these, whether you're starting out or you're well on your way in the world of investing. In these kinds, yes, it is recorded. Actually, this is recorded and they do share it. And have you guys not received recordings of the past meetings? No? No, I'll put in that correction. Okay, I have received them. Okay, great. Cool. Yeah, they're meant to be, because there's a whole bunch of people that for whatever reason can't get on, or, timing isn't right, all sorts of things. So we just want to make sure that they have the opportunity to get them. Kristen, you can, anybody who hasn't received one, how do I want to handle this one? I'll mention it to the team. I'll mention it to the team and make sure. So you may get a second link to a bunch of meetings or something, but you've got them, great. And sometimes you get them in an email and you might not read them and recognize them as that, depending on what the subject line is. I know we send out too many emails, I'm told, so can't help it. Anything else? Any burning questions that you guys want to get into? No, nothing's up. One of the things that I say, and I say it often, because I think it's important for everybody here to understand. I say it often at meetings, but it doesn't really change what I believe and what has proven over many years is, as REIN members, and because it goes back to raising capital. So it goes back to raising capital is whether you know it or not, you're developing yourself as a leader, or you are already leaders in the space of real estate investing. There's a lot of people that don't take the time to show up at a member meeting, or they don't want to follow. They don't want to work that hard. They don't want to take the time out. They wouldn't take the time to be on a call like this, and because they'd rather be doing other things. Some of you had to make arrangements to be on this call. Some of you have to make arrangements to get out to a regular meeting. That in itself is leadership, and whether you recognize it today or not, those around you, your circle of influence, are actually noticing. They see that. Sometimes they may think you're a little bit crazy, but more and more as you get confident in what you're doing, that just shows up as the leadership that you can be for somebody else who's looking to increase or to improve their own financial futures. So, I just want to honor you for taking the time to be on these calls. And I know this is not always an easy journey. It's just not. Sometimes it's hard slugging, and there's lots of what feels like risk and decisions to be made. There's a question that just showed up in the chat. Would you invest in Alberta or Ontario? Yes. That's the answer to the question. For you, I'm going to keep going back to, don't chase deals. Look at a province, look at a city, look at why. Okay, so the intention of investing in real estate is what? We want to create a financial future. We want to have financial security. We want to have financial freedom. It's all of the things that all of the narrative and the verbiage around that. But ultimately, what we're trying to do in achieving any of those goals is we're trying to make our money work harder for us than we work for our money. So the key here is always to ask yourself, if I'm going to invest in a city, whether it be Edmonton or Calgary or Barrie, Ontario, or Hamilton, wherever, it could be I don't care, in Regina. It doesn't really matter. When we look at these markets, Matthew's going, no, not Regina. So when we look at but that's the point, right? Can you actually park capital in real estate in that city, and given the economic fundamentals that are driving a real estate market, can you look into the future and say, hey, I want to get in front of what's going on here? The economy is starting to percolate. There's jobs, and people are going to be moving into the city looking for those jobs. When people get jobs and make money, guess what they do? They rent and ultimately buy properties. The key always is, why are people moving into that city or into that province? Now, there's a lot of conversation going on right now about immigration, and what happens if Trudeau gets voted out, and what do we think is going to happen? Well, I don't think anything's gonna happen. I think whatever government goes in there, even the Conservatives, they may have a different set of filters, they may have a different set of requirements, but ultimately the volume of immigration into Canada isn't really going to change ultimately all that much. It's still going to be quite high. Some would say it's very extreme right now, and it's costing us too much money because it's costing us $6 or $8 grand a year net on any immigrants that come in. All sorts. It doesn't matter the math. The point is this: is that immigration into Canada it will continue to be strong. There's nobody that's going to shut it right off. We don't have an extreme right. We don't, even our left, as extreme as some might think, we currently have, is not that extreme. So immigration will continue. As long as we got immigration into Canada, we're going to have demand for housing, and we have some really significant supply shortages, for example, in Ontario and in British Columbia. So those are all areas that make sense. Now what we're looking for is where in what provinces do we start to see some growth happen? I will caution you, and I will say this, is that Alberta's resurgence economically will not be all about oil. The oil game has changed a lot. Everybody's waiting for jobs to pick up in the oil industry. It's not going to be an epic pickup, and I'll tell you why. Economic downturns create huge changes in how we do things. We have to produce more or as much at less cost, and that means laying off people. That we know is what's happening. And then technology kicks in. So having been born and raised in Edmonton, in Alberta, and knowing the oil industry relatively well, the jobs, as they start to pick up, as oil and gas starts to pick up, they're not going to be what they were in the past. It doesn't take 15 people to run an oil rig anymore. They're almost doing it remotely with 3 people. And so the jobs are going to change. You're going to see far less labor in the oil industry in terms of, roughnecks and that kind of stuff, which was all high paid jobs. You'll start to see that transition where they're going to be educated. They're going to be engineering type individuals and technician type individuals going forward. You'll start to really see that shift. So that's all to say that Alberta's economy will in fact start to transition, but it's not going to be back into what some people may think it was. It's going to be, I think, more robust and higher income, more educated, less labor intensive in the oil and gas industry. Question of, is there a formula for the financial parts of an RTO? Yes, that's a way big question. RTO is a huge conversation to have. Who asked that? Mark, I don't remember. Where are you from? Because there's lots of people within the community that are experts in that area.
Yeah, Central Alberta, small town.
Okay, Central Alberta. So in your case, if you reached out to Donna McGuire, they got a whole program around RTO. So Donna McGuire is a really great source. Do you get out to the member meetings? Do you get out to the live meetings?
I haven't been.
Okay, Mark, what the hell are you doing? Get out there. The thing about getting out to the live meetings, everyone, is that the community is like, if you walked into a Calgary meeting or an Edmonton meeting, I'd hook you up 2, 3, 4 people that are RTO. They have an experience with RTOs. Some of them are deal makers. Some of them their expertise is RTO. Harder for me to do that. For those of you who haven't gone on to My Rain Space yet, spend a little bit of time on My Rain Space. There's still some activity going on there. There's some guys out there that have lots of answers. There's people that go out there. Tom asked RTO. RTO is rent to own, so that rent to own strategy. So go on My Rain Space. There's lots of answers to the questions, for example, around strategy, a lot. RTO is a big topic. Big topic. Always has been and will continue to be. It's a great strategy. It's like agreements for sale. Understand agreements for sale, and it can open up a whole new door for you of opportunities. And those are all strategies that it's like, that's truly embracing it as a business and taking it on in that way. Now, I've done some agreement for sales, really casual part-time kind of stuff, but part of that's just because I've been doing it a long time. If you're gonna, and I'm not out to grow my portfolio any bigger than it is. If anything, I'm kind of trying to cull the herd, trim it down. But I did do a really cool agreement for sale. I'll tell you an agreement for sale I did. It was really, but it's an interesting one. It's a little bit of hair on the deal, but I bought a historic condo, which I just said I would not buy. But anyways, I bought a historic condo, and here's why. Guy approached me a couple of years ago and said, "Will you take this condo off my hands?" And it's historic. It's an older building, but redone. It's a fantastic building. Walkability is through the roof in downtown Edmonton, and I didn't want to do it because it just it was one of those too good to be true deals, and I'll tell you I'll tell you about that in a minute. So anyways, like 2 years later, I know him, so every so often he'd go, "PF, why don't you do this? Like, nobody else can do this. You know how to do it. You do it." And he didn't want to put it out to anybody else. So I finally, last summer, I sat down. I said, "Okay, let me take a really hard look at this. And why are you doing it?" Now, funny enough, the reason he's doing it is because he owes a bunch of tax in the US and he owes a bunch of tax to RevCan. And he's not in a position. Now, of course, now what you have to do, thank you very much, Mr. Government, you have to disclose when you sell a principal residence. And so once he does that, all sorts of flags go off, and then then he has to get caught up on taxes and all the rest of it. So he wants to get from underneath of it. Long story short, I pushed back hard, said I didn't want it. He kept coming back. I got Barry McGuire, our legal counsel, involved on it, and he pushed back hard. I made him get his own lawyer. Like, I just kept saying no because I was really nervous about this coming back to haunt me later. Anyways, long story short, he did the deal. He's happy he did the deal. For 35 grand in, I took over. I assumed the existing mortgages. One was a line of credit. One was an existing mortgage, which totaled $365,000, and it has a tenant in it. It doesn't cash flow positive quite, but it will. But the upside was it's worth $825,000. So I don't know if it's good yet. We'll see when I go to exit. So we'll see how that all works, because he's got to get some work done. He's got to do some work in order to get it handled. And maybe I shouldn't worry about it, because when I go to exit, in his world, it's all going to hit the fan. So he's got some stuff to clean up. So he sold it, got from underneath the debt, put 35 grand in his jeans, and bought himself 3 years where he doesn't have to disclose. So that's the story. Yeah, I'm going to sell into the market. So when it comes to exit, I'll sell into the market is exactly what I do. The other thing I can do, and I couldn't do it last summer. I can probably do it now because I've dumped a couple of things, but I go and when I sell into the market, I can actually go for financing myself. Right now, he's got the mortgages. That was the upside for me. I didn't have to qualify for a mortgage, right? So I just did an agreement for sale, which is just wrapping around. So for those of you, if you don't understand agreement for sale, it's in some areas in Australia it's called a wrap, I think, and we actually wrap an agreement around the existing mortgage. So this is a legally binding agreement, but the banks don't want to know anything about it. They don't care. It's like, this is the deal, and as long as I'm still looking after it, or as long as I'm making the payments, there's no headaches. I go to exit. All I have to do is go and get financing on that property, which I won't have a problem doing, especially with the upside. There's lots of spread. So, So anyways, that's agreement for sale. Sometimes those things happen. Anything else? We're good? Awesome, guys, ladies. It's always better. I always like looking at people. That's the whole point of Zoom. And I know some of you just can't put yourself in that position, but whenever you can, these calls are really great, but it's always really great to see everybody. So thanks everybody for your time. Hopefully this was really helpful. I get a sense it was. You'll get the recording. Remember, CEO at Rain Canada. All those emails I get, and I respond to them all. So feedback one way, good, bad, or indifferent is always great. Topics, please bring it in. Mark and everybody, get the hell out to these live events if you can. They're just way, way better. You know, everybody thinks it's a how-to. I'm going to tell you right now, the trick, the actual secret sauce of Rain being around 27 years, the secret sauce of actually Rain members having a track record for taking action is two things. Number one, you pay to play. You're here, you're not looking for another free meetup, and you're not looking for another way to get all excited about nothing and then not taking action. You pay to play, number one.